So hi, everyone. Welcome to the Three Pillars Initiative Q&A session. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Today, we are joined by Rick King, the president of the Three Pillars Initiative, Karen Tardy, the program coordinator for the Future Philanthropist program, which is one of our affiliate programs, Remy Sheehan, Senior Program Officer, and myself. I am also a Program Officer for TPI. We look forward to sharing more information with you about our program, as well as answering some questions that have been submitted and then any other questions that happen to come up during this presentation. So with that being said, I'd like to turn things over to Rick.
Yeah, just very briefly add my welcome also, and thank you for your continuing interest in the TPI program model. We still call it new, and even though the original program, which was the Future Philanthropist program, is just finishing its 11th year, in many ways it still seems new because of the organic nature of developing this program over the last many years. So not to reiterate what you already know, but the difference between this program and others, other youth grant-making programs you may have known about, is that it's a learning experience for teens in giving, getting, and volunteering, the three Ps, the three pillars of philanthropy. That's significant because it adds two additional elements to what many community foundations are doing now in just grant making, but it's the interrelatedness of these three pillars that makes it the powerful tool that it is for community youth engagement. As you know, the purpose of this program is to teach the art, science, and business of philanthropy to the next generation, and I should say next generation of leaders. We really are emphasizing in this program a shared experience with leaders. So all of the kids in the program are leaders. If you remember, if you were took a student abroad when you were in college experience, I know some people that have had that experience tell me today they're still in touch with those people after 20, 30, 40 years. Because that was a significant bonding experience. That's very similar to the outcomes that the three pillars model is showing, at least in the early stages. So the differences, again, not to, because I know you know these. Number one, it's based on thematic learning modules for all of the three Ps, giving, getting, and volunteering. It involves adult philanthropy mentors. In the original program, Future Philanthropist program in Oak Park, there are no salaried employees involved in the day-to-day management of this program. That's important to know, and that may be one of your questions is, how do you do that? So that's it. Also, the program has proven to show it can add donors. I know some of the questions may seem that that's counterintuitive, that it not do that, but in fact, our success has shown that. And thirdly, or fourthly, it's self-sustainable. This is an advantage because the fundraising activities of the teens offset the grant-making activities that they do, and it just keeps building from there. And this can happen within the first 3 years of the program. So I know you have questions. We've had questions that we've been submitted by those who can't join us, but let me turn this over to Remy now to start opening up the question and answer session.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and start with one of the questions that we had gotten. And this is kind of a relatively common one in terms of the idea of how do you integrate this into the work that you do with the rest of the foundation? Obviously, foundations and community foundations in general have a lot of different interests and a lot of different, goals and, in things that they're trying to accomplish at any given time. So trying to take on a new task can definitely seem very, difficult and challenging and pretty overwhelming, especially trying to get it, short and long term successfully. And so then in terms of this, what I really wanted mostly to address was the idea that this program is definitely meant, and what we work with is the idea of trying to get it to be something that can really add on to what the foundation already does and what it's able to accomplish. It's not meant to, detract from anything that the foundation does. It's meant to add on and really benefit and amplify that work that you're already doing. So essentially, it's kind of this process of funneling is kind of what I mostly wanted to mention in this area. It's that, this program is not a means to, it's more of a means to an end. It's not just an end in itself. So the funds that are going into this program, they don't stop at the program. It's not just, giving, the program $25,000 and then giving that to the students and having them go home. Obviously, that wouldn't be very helpful. So the point of it, though, is to have it go through the process of youth integration, of integrating the youth in the community into the philanthropic process, to have them be a part of it, and to not just, use them as being able to help with, including youth more in general, but it adds a lot of specific values that are pretty important that we'll get to a little bit later on. But the idea itself is specifically with this is just that it's personalizable to whatever the foundation itself is interested in, whether that be a specific interest in terms of, youth food insecurity, or whether you're working with homelessness, whatever it is. For example, one of the affiliates that we currently work with, they have a primary focus on a couple specific things, being that they have mental health awareness, drug and alcohol awareness, fun and safe activities for kids, and then peer-to-peer learning. Those are the 4 primary areas that the foundation that we work with focuses on. And so this past year, especially, they had, talked to their youth and the junior cohort specifically that gives out the granting money. And they were most interested in helping the mental health of the community and in mental health of the youth in the community in particular. And so that's kind of where they wound up funneling their attention and the funds, because they went through this process of conversation and understanding the community and what the foundation and the youth wanted together. So it's not meant to, detract from any of the things that you're trying to do. If you have a goal, it really is a very good and effective way at still being allowed to accomplish those tasks while adding on ththese other pretty important values that you're then able to really kind of amplify the impact in that type of sense. And so that's kind of, a little bit more about the idea of integrating TPI is a key word. It's integration. It's not replacing, it just adds on to it. So if anyone has any questions about this specific question, feel free to let me know right now. Otherwise, you can let me know at another point as well.
Remy?
Yeah.
I would just add that while we are in our 11th year, those couple of early years when we relied a little bit more on the community foundation here locally, I never got the impression that it was sort of an overwhelming reliance, that anyone at the foundation felt overly taxed by jobs or tasks or anything like that. And we have moved away from that model little by little by little, simply because our program is run now primarily by volunteers, and reliance on the foundation and maybe diverting their attention away from some of their strategic initiatives or tasks or whatever has become less and less and less. So it wasn't very much to begin with at the beginning, and now we're really kind of standalone.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also on to that, obviously, the process of creating a program from scratch is very different from creating or implementing a program that has gone through the process of figuring everything out that we went through. So that's a big part of what it was for us, especially at the beginning, was really figuring out, how does this even work? How do you implement this? How do you make it successful? And so part of that, to make sure that the program takes the least amount of resources in terms of time of the staff members and money itself, is obviously by having something that has been through the process of understanding what the best way to do it is. So definitely, Karen. Yeah.
Remy, I just have a question for you guys.
Absolutely.
If unfortunately schools aren't opened again and the face-to-face isn't a possibility, have you guys discussed, maybe being flexible with the program and doing a virtual service to keep it going? I'm just curious about those thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. So that's kind of something that we had to do obviously last year. And so that's the way that most different foundations were able to do it, was kind of starting off the year that everything started to shut down was a little bit more difficult because there wasn't any time to plan. But last year overall, the majority of everyone wound up doing things virtually. And so moving entirely virtually, I know I've talked to Karen about this a little bit, but the process of moving entirely virtually is difficult, obviously, but it's not as difficult as kind of having a little bit in different areas. So a little bit in person, a little bit in virtual is definitely a lot more challenging, just to try to accommodate everyone in a different capacity. But the idea of going entirely virtually is something that we did last year and kind of went through the whole process of learning about exactly what to do. And then obviously connecting with all the other foundations and figuring out, what are the best ways that they are able to do it. Whether, another foundation works primarily through Google Slides and through Google Drive to be able to share all of their conversations as they're working on the documents together. And then obviously being through Zoom to kind of have that face-to-face interaction. I know that someone else, one of the other program coordinators did mention the idea that when they were in person for a little bit, everyone had the masks and a lot of distance, and they actually felt that that was a little bit worse than when they were able to get on virtually and they communicate. When people weren't wearing masks, you could see each other, everyone had their cameras on, and were able to genuinely communicate, where especially for students who, if they're not going to be able to see people or have a conversation with them, especially about these types of events, it's going to really take a toll on them and their mental health. So the ability for them to have the conversation and to really feel like they have the autonomy to make changes still in their communities without having to directly be there is definitely something that is not only feeling that we've looked on, but is definitely something that we want to really push to make sure that that's definitely present, especially in the case that schools are not able to open.
And I should add, where we were able to, we actually did adapt the learning modules, the curriculum, to fit a virtual experience. And so that all of that curriculum now, all of that thematic learning experience can be achieved virtually 100%. There's nothing that in the original curriculum that's left out.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about the curriculum, or is that going to come here up in a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, like a specific question, or like the curriculum in general and the process of how it works?
In general, but also like in like connection with the slide that just popped up is like how updated is the information? Is it very inclusive of various gender identities and cultures and religions?
Yeah, I can definitely talk about that. Oh, go ahead, Rick.
Let me take a stab at that first, then Remy jump in here as well. The original curriculum that was written for this in 2019 was through a grant that we received from a family foundation that liked the idea and wanted to really see it written in a way that could be delivered by adult community volunteers. So to the extent that these volunteers would know something about philanthropy or something about civic work or involved in fundraising, that was great. But we wrote it so as if they really had a minimal amount of background, they could still deliver the thematic learning modules and also facilitate all of the outreach activities into the community. So that was the way the curriculum was written. There are 8 modules for the junior cohort. There are 9 modules for the seniors because they start a month early, earlier than the juniors, to get a head start on their fundraising campaign for that year, which is a 9-month effort to raise money in various ways. So the curriculum is really the driver of the learning experience, complete with handouts, videos, all kinds of AV references and things that you can actually just deliver almost like a turnkey once you have your mentors in place and once they are feel comfortable enough that they can deliver the program material. So that's a fairly distinctive part of the program. And we've had great success with it in the facilities that are foundations that have this.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it is. The ability to have it as a turnkey curriculum, to be able to then have the students learn about the topics, but then not just learn about it from a purely educational, self-contained perspective, but really have it that they're the ones that go out, the reins are handed over to them, and they do pretty much all of the work by themselves in terms of they have to do the research, they have to do the interviews for the site visits, for all of the process of the granting, they have to read the grants and then distribute and decide on the allocation of the funds. Then the second year is obviously they do the same thing about learning a little bit more about fundraising, but then they have to do it all themselves again. So the curriculum is really meant to be there to kind of support the mentors that can be from any sector in terms of business or nonprofit, whatever it is, to bring their background knowledge to be able to connect with the kids in the best way possible. And so kind of building a little bit more off of that, connecting with pretty much anyone in a community, especially people with more marginalized identities, and especially people that are not classically part of what people consider to be philanthropy. That's definitely, or especially the ones that feel like they've been left out or have been very structurally not included in this type of work. And that's kind of part of what the curriculum is meant to do in a couple of different levels. Obviously, first, being able to try to give this opportunity to people that wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity, and going into a community that wouldn't necessarily directly work with philanthropic engagement. Obviously, there's a lot of communities out there where a lot of the parents in the community are directly involved with philanthropy, and so then their children are pretty understanding of what the process is, and then they want to teach their kids how to be philanthropists as they grow up, and it's a kind of self-contained cycle that grows and perpetuates itself. But obviously, trying to really work with different communities that don't have that cycle, that haven't had that ability to build off of that in the past, and to really trying to find out the best way to connect with them in the community, and then to be able to have that be successful so that they have better understanding of this. And so part of it is the personalization a little bit of the program itself. So when we have the program that goes into the foundation, if there are specific areas that are of interest to the students and the people in the community, they are then able to kind of tailor the program a little bit to have conversations that focus more on certain areas. For example, if they want a little bit more on social justice, and then there are certain discussion points that are meant to really allow the conversation to flourish and allow the students to then explore these different topics to really connect in the best way possible. So it's not just giving, here's what philanthropy is. It's mostly having them understand that the philanthropy really is a lens that they can look through everything that they do in their life, whether or not they do have $1 billion to be able to just go out and give money. That's not the point of what we're trying to do with the program. So additionally, in terms of supporting different people from more marginalized identities, really giving them a voice and directly stating that you genuinely support them and their ideas and what they feel is legitimate, because youth in general, especially more marginalized youth, definitely feel like they're not going to be listened to. They don't have a right to vote. They don't get a say in anything. And so their ideas and their thoughts and their feelings tend to be trivialized, which really hurts them in terms of their engagement with the community and their engagement with the nonprofit world in general. So having tried to make sure that they have that engagement and that you support them is really important. But then the specific aspects of the program itself in terms of the student selection process is really key to this, going through and making sure that the students that are able to be in the program are from a variety of backgrounds and have a variety of attributes, whether that is more classical diversity in terms of different races and genders, but then obviously also different identities and different, even getting down to different personalities and different more internal traits like that. You want to have it as much as possible, which is partially why we connect from different high schools in an area. It's not just one high school, it's different high schools in the local area. So students from slightly different areas are able to see these other experiences, connect with them, feel that they can make this change, and then are able to do that. And as well, we go and we make sure that the counselors are connected within the different schools, so that we have this line of communication with them to understand who are the best students that we could be able to have in this program, that not only would the program benefit from, but then the students would also benefit from, to really definitely connect with them. Then obviously the idea of just overall structural change is pretty important. So if you're going to try to change philanthropy and this general idea, you have to do it structurally. You have to do it from the ground up, which is that next generation that's going to be coming through. And you can't really make the change from people that have been in this world for 50 years. It's really going to be this next generation that are the most vocal, the most inclusive, the most interested in this type of stuff. And so diverting a lot of funds and, you know, this type of process through the integration of youth is really crucial, not just to helping them, but helping the entire community improve as a whole, to be able to get their thoughts, opinions, and feelings into this process as well.
Remy,
So, yeah.
oh, sorry to interrupt. Have you guys had any chance to survey your current partners and students on strategies to better support the, people of color or LGBTQ? I'm just interested if you've gotten feedback already as to how they would like to participate or have that shared space.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we kind of have that in two different ways, where it's kind of informal feedback that we have, and then a little bit more formal feedback. When I work with, obviously, the different foundations that we already work with, throughout the process of the year and the creation of the program, there's a lot of, informal feedback of every discussion I have with them on a daily basis on whatever it is, learning about what they're slightly changing and how they're learning to kind of connect more with different students of different identities. So that's definitely something that we do really make sure that we're doing continuously. And so kind of some more of the ideas that we've heard are the idea of making sure that the program is able to kind of listen more than just directly telling. So that's part of a lot of the implementation aspects of the program, are areas that you're supposed to have a conversation, you're supposed to have a dialogue. And so this is supposed to really enhance and bring to the table a dialogue more than anything else. So, one of the community foundations we work with, I work with the program coordinator a lot, and she definitely really feels like that's one of the most impactful things in engaging the students, especially ones of different identities, to feel like they're able to feel and emote the different the different emotions that they have, and the feelings about the types of discussions that they're having. And so that kind of creates kind of a snowball effect, essentially, to be able to have more of an impact on the students, and then increases their engagement, increases their excitement for it, and then increases the idea that they really believe that this is something that they could pursue, and that this is something that they could help them moving forward. And then obviously the other aspect that we do is more formal feedback, which is usually done at the end of the year. And so we've started a different type of feedback that we send out, a much larger survey that gets a lot more feedback. And so that kind of happens more toward the end of the year cycle. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that formal process, Rick.
Actually, I was going to ask Karen to kind of describe how the Oak Park program has done this, particularly in forming, in the beginning, forming the junior cohort. And I know we've used a lot of school counselors to actually help in shaping that cohort. Karen, you want to address that?
Yeah, that really is our, that word of mouth within the community and with families who have had students already go through the program. But the school counselors are really our best bet. We work with one at each of the schools that our students come from, and just sitting down with them and having an open and honest conversation with them about how important it is to us to have our new cohort every single year really reflect what our community looks like. And Oak Park River Forest are very diverse communities, and we want our cohort to reflect that. So I can't say that that's been an easy process. We have, there have been years where we've been pretty loud about it and still found that we maybe at least in our applicant pool, don't have quite the diversity in all manners that we would like, but then find that other years we're thrilled with the students that come forward and are interested in the program. It's important to us to make sure that they understand, especially through the interview process, that everyone is welcome and that everyone is supported. I think Rick would agree that we're often stunned in the interview process after they've applied at how open and honest the kids are about who they are, who they want to be, or if they're still struggling to figure that out, or what they're looking for, the kind of organizations that they would be interested in funding if they were accepted to the program. So the kids, it's important to them and it's important to us. And like I said, we try to be pretty vocal about it.
All right, so thank you for submitting your questions. We're going to allow time at the end for any additional questions as well that you might come up with in the midst of the rest of this. But now we're going to answer some commonly asked questions that we see throughout our time speaking to different community foundations.
A completely virtual environment. The curriculum has adapted beautifully to a virtual environment. I know the kids are a little Zoom weary. They've had quite a bit of it, but they come, they show up on time. Most of them, the majority have their screens on. And if I ever feel as though, hey, I need to see your face, I tell them to turn their screens on. And most of them follow my lead. But like I said, the curriculum has adapted beautifully to it. I will say, in all honesty, that the one downside to the world and how it's affecting our program is volunteering. That has always been a big part of our program. We've tried to do it with both the juniors and the seniors throughout the program year, hitting it really hard sort of January through May, always finding opportunities for them to come together. We paint hallways in schools, we clean up forest preserves, do all sorts of things, but they're together and they're enjoying it as a group. And we haven't been able to do that part of it. So that I would say is the harder nugget to try to figure out, is the volunteerism. So I just try to make a big deal at every meeting about, are you still out there? Are you still seeing and feeling needs in the community? Are you still trying to fill those needs yourself or with your family? Or are you tutoring online? Are you handing out meals at the food pantry, safely at a distance sort of thing? Try to keep them all involved in doing that. Other than that, I think it really has, really gone like clockwork.
Yeah, so one of the questions we seem to always get is, what kind of costs are we talking about to get this done, particularly the financial commitment for the first year? And I will say that we always talk about this budgeting process as a goal, and that is to reach self-sustainability by year 3. And so the metrics work out on this, the dollars and the numbers work out on this, such that actually we've seen that happen. And as a matter of fact, this is where the fundraising part of both their knowledge and doing it, skills come into play. By the 3rd year, which is the 2nd year of fundraising, they really now know how to do this. And if they follow the learning modules and do this in that way, they can succeed. The specific costs of that first year, and I want to tell you what those are too, but they always relate to the amount of grant money you want to set aside in the first year, because that's the minimum amount in terms of program startup that you are committing yourselves to, hopefully, over the next many years. I know Oak Park started at a high level at $25,000 because of its funding structure and donors that invested in the program. But it too, after a series of fits and starts, had a fundraising program that raised at its highest year, I think, Karen, what was it, 138,000?
Something like that, yeah, right around there.
So we're not at that didn't happen until maybe the 6th or 7th year. So it is possible. But the point is, the budget really relates to the amount of grant money that you can raise. If you set a threshold of $10,000 your first year and kind of follow that in the beginning, the investment would be roughly $25,000 the first year and $25,000 the second year. And with that investment, on a $10,000 annual grant cycle, you'll be able to break even with following the fundraising protocols that we have in the curriculum. If you go to 20,000, the metrics go up by 10,000. So it's 35,000 the first year and 35,000 the second year before they reach then their goal. And part of this is also the number of students involved in a program. So having an initial cohort of 15 students each year gives you 15 students to raise money. And since fundraising is a real time and effort, if you had 25 students, your odds of raising more money increase dramatically. So it's a combination of what you set as your annual grant making cycle and how many kids you allow or accept in the program. Based on that amount that would be raised over the next 2 to 3 years. So that's kind of the sequence of the program. And happy to ask or answer any questions about where that money comes from or the details of that budget by sending you some additional material. Just ask Remy or Maggie for it.
Okay, so what allows this program to be self-sustainable, like Rick had just mentioned, is also what makes the 3 pillars model so unique, and that is its fundraising facet. So while the junior year focuses on grant making, the senior year focuses on fundraising. This is done so that the money raised in the senior year can then be put back into the junior grant making for the next year. And so this cyclical process allows the program to be self-sustainable while also teaching the students proven methods of gift solicitation in the form of letter writing campaigns and personal asks to larger donors, just to name a couple. And with that in mind, the program is designed to reach the point of perpetual self-sustainability within 3 years, like Rick has just mentioned. And this is best illustrated in our financial pro forma, which is what Rick had just mentioned, and that can be sent to you upon request. So absolutely don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Remy, and either of us will be more than happy to send that along to you.
That would be my role. And actually, I'll start with the mentors. The mentors have been referred to by some of the folks in our community, which I just love, as sort of the secret sauce to the program. They really do the yeoman's work of connecting with the kids, really being their connection to FPP. I'm just sort of that lady in the background that, you know, make sure that the food's on the table, make sure they have all their documents, make sure that, you know, bug them by email sort of thing. The mentor really leads them through the program. We do a lot of Rick or I or somebody introduces a topic, and then we break out either in the room and they talk amongst themselves or in breakout rooms on Zoom. And the mentor then leads them through that topic, all of the bullet points, draws them out, that sort of thing. The mentor keeps in touch with them outside of FPP, which is really, really nice. We have a gal on the senior side of the program right now struggling with her health, and her mentor is just, you know, right there in her corner every minute and keeping Rick and I apprised of it, and really is just as much a friend as she is a mentor to this gal. As far as what I do, you know, I laughingly daily describe it as sort of herding cats and pushing paper. I really just try to keep the program on track on a day-to-day basis, make sure everybody knows what's coming up, what direction we're going with certain things. I'm really the liaison between the foundation and the program. So anything that, you know, we need to know or anything I need to ask of the foundation pretty much goes through me.
Definitely, yeah. I'll go through these relatively quickly. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to reach out to me directly and I'll expand on them. The first one is mostly just asking about the impacts that this type of program has on the community itself and obviously the community foundation. And that's definitely a pretty easy one to answer. Obviously, the program is meant to help and educate the students, but it's definitely not meant to be a self-contained program like that. It's not purely existing in an educational plane like that, it really does have direct implications that you'll be able to see relatively quickly in the community in terms of, overall mental health with the youth, in terms of being able to see them engaged and feel like they're listened to and cared about. And overall, a lot of research that kind of really supports the idea of integrating youth into this type of philanthropic process of it directly increases the socioeconomic development of the community and increases a ton of the community connections, which is what we've been talking about a lot of this time. But the idea of the different sectors, different generations, different walks of life, different donors, organizations, businesses, everything, it really kind of is a really nice middle point for all these different areas of the community to connect. And obviously that is also able to create really good structural change within a community, as well as the philanthropic process itself, and then lasting change. Because if you really want a change to happen in the long term, you really need to engage the next generation that's going to be leading that changes as it continues. And then lastly, for more of the community foundation itself, it does more in terms of increasing donor engagement. And that's kind of something that we've been able to see a lot with, donors are really interested in something that interests them, something that's innovative and important work. And if they can be connected with the type of work that they're doing, more importantly, they're going to be a lot more interested in engaging it. I'll answer this a little bit more in the second question, but overall, that's kind of a lot of the goals with what the program is, in terms of it's got long-term prospects and interests for the program in terms of helping the students and creating a much better future down the line. But it also does have a lot of really direct and very immediate impacts in terms of the community itself. And then I'll go to the next question to talk a little bit more about the donors in general. I know this is something that we get a lot, is that we like this program, but we already have donors, and if we ask them to donate to this type of program, then we no longer have the funding that we normally would have as a community foundation. And so that's definitely something that we kind of definitely think about in terms of the structure of the program itself and why everything's oriented the way it is. This isn't meant to, in any sense of the word, reallocate the funds. The program is not meant to compete with anything that you already do. And so, primarily the program is designed to be really very lean in terms of the costs. There's not really anything that directly is gone into this, obviously just the licensing itself. But other than that, the funds that go into the program do immediately then go back out to the community. So it's not like they're directly, gone from the foundation like that. So that's one of the main things with the overall structure of the program itself. But then more importantly, there's kind of two main ways that this doesn't really have any problem with the donors, in terms of the first way being that the donors really only have to have the major donation at the initial start of the program. And then after that, they're not really asked for anything else necessarily for the sustainability of the program. We already mentioned a little bit more about how the program is able to sustain itself, and that doesn't need any more donations from the different donors. So they're not taken out of the pool in any sense like that. And then the second way that it's really done is that the donations that are raised, mostly in the fundraising aspects of the program, are really done from genuinely new donors that hadn't really been engaged with the community foundation in the past. I know for example, for the pilot program in Oak Park, about 92% of the donors for the program were entirely new. And then around even like 10% of them still stay around even after whatever interaction, whether they knew students that were in the program or they had a kid. A lot of them then still do stay as donors for the community foundation later down on the line. So not only is it able to find its own donors to be able to support the program and the expansion and growth of it, but it's able to then actually bring in more donors overall for the foundation itself. And so those are kind of the ways that we really look at these, the ways that the program is able to impact the community foundation and the community as a whole. It doesn't have any detraction of any of the other funds at all. So that's kind of what the two questions are. That's mostly what we had. And so obviously, if anyone has any direct questions right now, feel free to ask them. And if you have any questions later, reach out to us and we will more than happy to answer them at that time.
I just wanted to ask, storytelling is becoming such a big part of fundraising. And I'm just curious, what are some of the stories that stand out to you guys that are so closely involved with the program and with your schools and with your students? Perhaps, a story of like a turnaround for a student, maybe somebody, that was hesitant coming into the program, but then turned it around and really engaged, and you saw some improvements or success or ideas come out of it that you didn't expect. I'm just curious, just personally, for those kind of stories.
Yeah, where should I start? Where can I start?
You actually could
Actually,
start with Remy if you wanted to.
I was just going to
That-
say, Remy,
That quiet kid.
Remy, when he came in as a junior, and Maggie was in the same year, same class, we all had our doubts about Remy, as whether or not he, would gain anything out of this. Which I'm joking, obviously. But Remy, by his own, probably his own description, was not the extrovert that he is today. There's no way. He was tended to hang back, kind of collect the thoughts of others and then respond, and ends up being one of the first employees of the Three Pillars Initiative. And there are so many others. Particularly, I won't say her name, but a similar situation with a Hispanic teenager, a girl who was very reserved. Her parents spoke very little, and I mean very little English. And she would be not only the first person to graduate from high school, but obviously then went on, and I think actually just this past year, or this year, I think graduates from college as the first Hispanic in their family to have an education. And all through that time involved in philanthropy, grew her leadership skills from the very beginning, got much more confident in talking with others, and really became a very confident, very mature young woman who still keeps in touch with us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Carly, there are, and it goes a little bit back into how do you shape a cohort? You know, in the beginning, you don't want all of the, AP kids and the most energetic, affable kids, outgoing kids. You want a blend of all kinds of personalities and backgrounds and other diverse factors. So that's we're amazed by these people every day.
Yeah. I would just say that if any of you have children of your own, you find that junior and senior year is a huge leap anyway for them, maturity wise, independence wise, all of that. I think we see it sort of doubled and tripled over after they go through this program. At least I feel that way. I have parents say that to me. And I just want to add that I remember the day Remy turned the corner. I was standing in front of the class and I asked for a volunteer to create something that we needed in a part of the curriculum. And Remy in the back of the room raised his hand. And I remember thinking, oh my God, he just volunteered. This is great. And now he runs it.
It's those quiet observers that are
I
always,
know, you got to watch out for.
they're always ready.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, if that's all the questions, then I think we're going to wrap it up. And then obviously we have our contact information on the screen. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to hearing more from you guys.